Oh boy, we've entered June, and it's once again, you enter June and suddenly all the storms and the clouds and everything clears up and it gets really sunny and really warm, and suddenly just sitting in my room starts to get really, really painful. Happy June, folks. Welcome, welcome. It's another Tuesday, another week, even though it is a new month where we have a bunch of news from the past week. There's Zero news, there's overdress news, there's premium news, there's BSFO that just happened. A lot of things happened over the last week, and for BSFO we'll have a separate video talking about kind of like wrapping up premium and everything that happened, so look forward to that coming out I think tomorrow. And of course, as we enter into a new month, I must also give a huge thank you to the YouTube channel members that come through and support the content, that help me afford all these overdress products and overdress decks and Zero stuff and everything. Y'all are the real ones. I really appreciate y'all 100%. So huge shoutouts to Crowned Clown, Very Flores, Platinum Wolf 2009, Carrie Barger, Christian, Kyra's Darkblade, Arcana Master, Tristan H, Jan Fish, Martinich 67, Cardinal Joker, Michael Lockett, The Real ZBD, Rika, Bradley Dyson, Jet Lee, Lindo 1332, Stogan, Gabriel Bestek of course, Mr. Gamerline, and PJJR. Y'all are the ones that keep supporting the content. Normally we do have remote fight tournaments exclusive to the YouTube channel members and the Twitch subscribers, but this month we are kind of putting them on hold because I'm very busy with commentating Bushwood Springfest Online, and just in general I'm commentating stuff like every single weekend this month, so I don't really have time to be hosting any FRF tournaments this time around. But next month in July we'll be back with a little bit of an overhaul and just a bit of a general interesting way to run things, so you can look forward to that. Alright, first things first, I want to quickly run through some of these Zero news, because even though a new set just came out today, actually I just uploaded my pack opening video for this new set, so make sure you check that out, be part of the crazy narrative that are the pack openings that I do on this channel and on Twitch. But on top of that, for Zero they announced some stuff for the 1.5 year anniversary that'll be happening this month. So you can see we already got like the super decks and the like Aichi Fez badges and things like that. There'll be an Aichi birthday gacha full of like royals and golds, and then there'll be some missions and login bonuses and like VP like 1.5 times and like 3 times campaigns on the, I think starting more or less from the 6th of June. Then from the 12th of June there'll be a special friend fight week, and then there'll be like a ranked week as well. There'll be like double drops and like guaranteed drops campaigns from the 12th as well, which I guess makes sense because that's around the time of that usually we have double drops. And then from the 18th we're gonna have a rank point 1.5 times campaign, so basically it'll be easier to climb ranked, which will be an interesting season. I wonder if that'll be like Percival or, because they have Aglovale as the ranked season right now, so maybe it'll be like Percival or Prominence Core, like we'll see. And then they also announced the seasonal event for this month, and they actually explicitly said this isn't the last seasonal event yet for the like Aichi arc, because we're going into G soon, but they said like there will be more. But what's really nice about this one is that there's 3 characters that are featured in it that you can get fight skins for. So of course Neve, Ratti, as well as Gaillard, so that's really nice. They are all priced at the usual like event skin price, so definitely don't want to miss your dailies and stuff like that. Get all those dice in there. I'm personally really happy because these skins, the normal versions, are all like 200 V medals each, and we don't gain any V medals this month, so I'm definitely glad that I can have skins for these characters without having to actually like use V medals, so that's pretty good. And that's kind of it for the Zero news. I'm going to be doing a day 1 decks pretty soon as well. I'm still kind of like tinkering around and like building some stuff and trying out decks for this new set because I have to work on this video. I haven't had too much time to actually do that, so you can look forward to that. But now let's talk about the actual overdress cards and things that have been announced over this last week. As usual, we'll wrap up from like last Wednesday onwards. So first things first, we got a little bit more Orpheus support. So first we got Cardinal Fang Marizuma. So this one says, when placed on rearguard circle, it's a grade 2. You can look at the top 3 cards of your deck to reveal a world card from among them, add it to your hand, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck, which is pretty cool, just because you essentially get to tutor for worlds, and we know that there is a third world coming now, which if you choose to play quite a few, then that means that you can search it out more easily. But I think that your deck space is pretty tight now at the moment. I'm not sure if this will actually see play. It is a nice filter, but top 3 for this to be a vanilla if you don't hit it is a little bit like, I'm not too sure if it's actually worth playing. What's definitely worth playing though is the world card that's being introduced in this set, which is Gorge Upon the Moonlight. Kind of must want to play it, and when placed in your order zone, you call 1 Shadow Army token, and then the rest of the effect text is basically just the, world becomes Dark Knight, Abyssal Dark Knight, stuff that you've seen on the other world cards. But this is a really cool world because this allows for really effective turn 2 rush, because you're on Cubizia, which can give 5k to something, you make a Shadow Army token, which is a 15k base, you can then call other stuff that can attack for big numbers too, and just kind of like rush your opponent really effectively on turn 2, and you can even commit some of the cards that like get rid of the tokens afterwards, so that way you can rush, and then you don't have rear guards left in the front row, so that way your opponent doesn't actually attack your rear to deny you damage from using Orphis next turn, and you can combine this with Bobo Mine on turn 2 to basically like refund the cost for that world. It's just really good. Like, I think for the playstyle that Orphis is going towards, which is like trading those tokens into resources and kind of excelling at that early rush that it has, I think this is looking really good. Like, I think this world card will be played at quite a few copies, and what's nice is that you can even choose to play it at lesser copies because you can search it from the, you know, from the grade 1 when you actually like ride up and like you do search for your world card, because this is just another world card. So that's definitely quite nice. So I was quite impressed with the support overall. I think that Orphis will be a really good deck going into set 2. As you know, it already is a really good deck in this first set, but in set 2 in particular, these cards look really, really good. Then we got a little bit of Eugene support. So first we have Strong Fortress Dragon, Jibra Brachio. So rearguard circle if your Vanguard is Eugene, you can Soul Blast 1 and rest this unit to choose an opponent's rearguard and retire it. So that's a really easy condition. Soul Blasting 1 and resting it just to pop something is really cool. And at the start of your battle phase, if your opponent has 1 or less rearguards, you stand him and he gets plus 5k power. So he's literally like a 15k attacker that fuels himself. You rest him to pop something and he stands himself back up at the start of the battle phase. So it's like, apparently I've heard from people testing Eugene that this card is really, really good and helps the set 2 deck really, really well. So it's cool to see. Like, I don't think this patches up like Eugene's like weaknesses, but the deck is already super aggressive, and I feel like this just helps you both be aggressive and control the field a little bit without having to, like, you know, rest stuff for Eugene's skill and all that kind of stuff, because things like this just stand itself back up. Even if you don't use the first skill and you just want to use Eugene's skill to like rest 2, you can rest 2 of these, pop something with Eugene's skill, and then they stand back up at the start of the battle phase and gain power. So this seems really good for Eugene, honestly. Like, this definitely seems like a good card to be playing. Second card was the Stealth Dragon Kizan Rage. It's once per turn rearguard circle, can almost 1 Soul Blast 1 to choose an opponent's rearguard in the same column as this unit and retire it. This one I don't really know. It's okay, but I feel like you have enough like retire cards and like retire extension cards that maybe you don't really need it. Although it's nice, you don't have to like rest it. You can like use a skill and then rest it for Eugene and things like that. So for that reason, it seems pretty decent. But again, this one doesn't feel as much of a massive win compared to the grade 2 we just looked at. Oh, I gotta start buying Pocari sweat or something, because God, I can feel the summer approaching. It's slowly approaching 30 degrees Celsius, and I definitely know that I won't be ready for it very soon. God damn Europe not having air conditioning, man. It's hard out here without air conditioning. I miss Japan. Anyway, they dropped one of the Keter triple rares on us, knowing that the second triple rare for Keter is Phantom Blaster Dragon, which is Heavenly Bow of Guidance Lefersos. So he has 2 skills, and to me this might be one of the more underwhelming triples of this set so far. So he says, rearguard still continuous. If you Persona Road this turn, he gets boost. And then back row rearguard circle once per turn. When your other unit stands by your card effect, stand this unit as well. Now, what I do like about this card is that it is basically a card that is good in both Hexa Orb as well as Bastion. I don't know about Phantom Blaster Dragon yet, but in both Hex Orb and Bastion, this feels pretty good, right? Because in Bastion, you're standing stuff with Bastion skill, and you know, by the time you reach Persona, right, I guess you can give him boost, and it kind of takes the spot for Dark Strain somewhat, except you can turn on boost on turn 3, so it's just like a beater, I guess, on turn 3, and then you just like put it back for turn 4, I guess. Like, I don't know, it's a bit strange in that sense. But then in Hexa Orb, this is kind of cool because you're always like aiming for Persona Ride in that deck anyway. And now with this skill, you basically get to use Lepisto and then like stand this behind Lepisto, and then you have like a, what, 31k column, because they're like, you know, 13, 13, and then plus 5. So yeah, I think it's 31k column, which is pretty nice, you know, without any other power-ups. So I think that this card is like, it's a pretty nice generic card, but definitely feels, I don't know, a little bit slow at the same time, but it doesn't really cost anything. Like, the stand effect doesn't cost anything. It's no Soul Blast, no Counter Blast, no nothing. So maybe it is good. It's just a shame that like once you go off of Persona Ride turns, it doesn't really do much. Like, its entire effect, both of its effects are tied to Persona Ride. Even if the second one doesn't really say that, you could play this with Dark Strain and then give it boost, you know, for the turn 3, and then that way, you know, you can still get that big stand on turn 3 and just have like this massive high roll turn. So maybe it's also like support for the more aggressive Bastion list that still runs Dark Strain, and just use this as like a 3 of or something, or a 2 of. I don't know, it's an interesting triple rare, but I definitely don't feel like it shines as bright as the other cards. What shines really bright for me is Sublime Will, which is the new Blitz order for Keter Sanctuary. If you have 3 or more grade 3 units, choose one of your Vanguards and it gets power plus 20k until end of battle. 20k shield is something that we've been definitely wanting because, you know, a lot of people are feeling bullied by 28k attacks and they're like, oh, I have to drop 2 cards for this all the time. But now in Vanguard, you know, in decks like this, you have 20k shield cards, and that is definitely pretty nice. If anything, it's with this and the front triggers they revealed today that I'm starting to feel like, damn, I made that video about like guarding and stuff and like magic numbers in overdress, and now it's like, oh, you guys are already making like 1 card 20k shields again, and I feel like everything's been invalidated. But of course, it's just like a 1-of Blitz order. It is definitely more Bastion focused. It's not very Hexa Orb focused, or I guess like PBD focused for the future. We'll see what that does next week, but it's a pretty cool card. I mean, 20k shield is nothing to scoff at, and the art is fantastic, and it just looks really, really good overall. And then Monday rolled around and they showed us some Zorga support. So the Zorga support, we have Baby Shark, except it's not a baby, it's a Fleet Eater Shark. Rearguard Circle when it attacks if you played an order by using Alchemagic this turn, Soul Blast 1, and until end of battle, this unit gets power plus 5k, and your opponent can all call from hand to Guardian Circle unless they call 2 or more cards at the same time. So it's a Battle Door effect for Soul Blast 1, but it also needs that Soul Blast 1 to gain 5k power. I think for Zorga, it's nice to have that guard restriction, but at the same time, it's not really the kind of deck that has that soul, because you're using your soul for your Alchemagics a fair bit, and the new order that they revealed a couple weeks back, also Soul Blast 1. So I feel like everything is kind of like Soul Blasting 1 here and there, and sure, you have Hendrina, but at the same time, like, that it's hard to over rely on that, because some games you just won't have access to her, you won't mill into her, won't open her, won't draw into her. So maybe it's like a 2-of, this is pretty good, but I think otherwise, I don't know, it's a nice little effect for finishing games, which is why I think you also don't need it at all stages of the game, unlike the actual, like, the dragon from the ride deck. But I think for finishing games it's pretty good, and you can commit that Soul Blast when you actually need it. And then we got this beautiful order, the Overcoming Unnatural Death. Dude, Zorga is a straight up undead pimp. Like, I love this art. It's so damn cool. Counterblast 1 to bind this card and return up to 2 order cards from your drop zone to your hand. Now, this card is really cool because this is the first card that allows this deck to interact with its blitz orders, because it does say, you know, return order cards. It doesn't say normal orders, doesn't say anything specific. So you can return, for example, your ghost chases back to your hand after having used them. You can return something, like if you have too many normal orders and drop from Alchemagic, you can return some of them back to hand if you want to use them again. You know, you can combine between a blitz order and a normal order, so it's just really, really good. For Calmos 1 to kind of like salvage 2 spells, that seems good to me. Of course, it clogs up your deck with cards that don't necessarily do anything, and you can, of course, Alchemagic with this too, right? You can, you know, cast this, and then basically, like, Alchemagic away the double rare order that we saw a couple of weeks ago, and then you get to basically both salvage something, and also you get to like revive some stuff and pop something and stuff like that. You don't get the power up, of course, from the Counterblast 1 to give 10k to everything, but I like that these orders all do wildly different things. And again, I like the fact that this lets you actually get your blitz orders back to hand, and I think that that is something that will only get better in the future, and this is only a common, so I would definitely pick up quite a few copies of this. I think it's also something that's interesting for Magnolia, although we got a normal order this, you know, in today's reveal, but even for Magnolia this is kind of interesting, because if you're really using a build with quite a few blitz orders, you can kind of use this to salvage them as well. Speaking of Magnolia, there was a monthly Bushiroad magazine reveal of the double rare for Stoicheia here in this set, which is Deep Emotion Maiden Urula. So continuous rearguard circle, when you would swap or move rearguards during the main phase, you can move them between rows. So this is kind of cool because, for example, for the Kusi, I know the name is pretty weird in English, but that one grade 1 that Stoicheia got that like can only be called to the middle back row circle from Festival Collection, you can now move that around. I guess that's kind of cool. But in a more generic sense, this is quite cool because if you have, for example, Ginosla in the back behind your Vanguard just like locked up in there, and then you don't have the counterblast to use it anymore, then you can just like promote it to the front and then intercept it away and like stuff like that, right? So that I think is pretty cool about this card. And like with the more cards they add that have that kind of like wants to attack from back row but uses cost effect, I think this might be pretty good. I don't know how many copies you want to run of this because it's just utility. It doesn't really add to your game plan, doesn't really like add to your like ability to win the game. You know, it's not more aggro, but it's more utility, which could be useful. The second effect I think is actually not that good. Your units in front of this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. So you might be thinking like, oh, this is resist, you know, that's so cool. I can counter Prison, I can counter Eugene, I can counter like all these kind of decks. But she says your units in front of this unit cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. So for example, Prison goes like, okay, I use Cheval Stud, imprison Urula, and then Uriela gets imprisoned and that effect disappears and then they take your front row, right? Or for example, Bastion, the control Bastion, plays the order that targets a column to bot deck it. Sure, they can't target the thing in front, it targets Uriela, and then as an extent it puts everything to the bottom. So you get what I mean? It feels like in the way that the control and like retire and like imprisonment and like everything in the game so far, how they work, that second effect doesn't really do much. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, so you guys in the comments can let me know, but this just doesn't feel that good to me for the most part. So I don't know, maybe it'll be better in the future, but for the time being this just doesn't seem like it's really doing anything. And then today we got some more rank 8 reveals. We have Aurora Battle Princess Bilat Canary. When placed on rearguard circle, choose an imprisoned card in your prison and put it into its owner's drop zone. Boy was I happy with this card, because it's something that is like, I don't know, let's say on turn 2 you ride Resat Pink and your opponent gives you, like, you're playing as Bastion, they give you Alden because you're like, haha, I'm gonna use the on-place ability, you know, outplayed, and then you play Bilat Canary and you force them to put their like one and only Alden into their drop zone, and that's just like the best thing ever, right? So I was thinking about that kind of idea of like, this is like a cool turn 2 play. Sadly it doesn't do too much outside of that, and of course you still want to have like pretty high counts of cards in your prison to basically be able to, you know, activate a bunch of effects or get extra drive checks, etc. So I don't know how good this card will be in the long run, but for the time being it seems okay. Like, this might be worth testing around with, just because of that idea of like, your opponent gives you stuff with on-place effects and you're like, nope, goodbye. Then we also got Aurora Battle Princess Whopper Prun. When placed on rearguard circle, if you have 5 or more of your opponent's cards imprisoned, countercharge 1 or soul charge 3. This card, I don't know, maybe in the future, because I don't know, like 5 or more is heavy. Like, I barely ever get that much outside of like maybe like Magnolia or something, and it seems like maybe like a more like affordable version of Bobble Mine. That's kind of how I'm looking at this. It's like a budget version of Bobble Mine, which is good to have, you know, definitely nice to have these kind of cards available, but the condition is just pretty damn hard. The Soul Charge 3 is quite good too, purely because we're seeing a lot more Soul Blast effects coming up now, especially with the cards we're going to look at in a moment, so this might come in handy in the future, we shall see. This one was a pretty huge reveal today though. They showed off front triggers that basically say, on Guardian Circle, if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, they gain 5k shield. So finally, we've been asking for it for quite some time now, but we got triggers with effects and they're defensive. So that's obviously amazing. You can see here, of course, the different nations and how their front triggers look with these extra abilities. They are rares, which means you'll get about like 12 of each per case, which means like 3 playsets per case. You're gonna need quite a few of these, I think, for some decks, so that's something definitely you need to keep in mind. But again, 20k shield. A lot of us have been asking for that, to have a 20k shield in Vanguard, and it looks like this time it's not going to be heals, but it's going to be fronts, which is really cool because it's in these specific turns where you start to need those 20k shields in general. So of course, I'm really happy about that. It's really cool that they brought them back in a way. Hopefully they explore this space with other triggers as well, but I see why they did it with fronts, because like, it's kind of like with stand triggers. Nobody used stand triggers until they started putting like busted effects on them, and then so now we kind of see a similar thing where people aren't really using fronts too much and are choosing to use just like crits, draws, heals, and they're putting these abilities that people definitely want to play. But I think there's still some decks, like for example like the turbo aggro decks like Magnolia, that still want draws more and crits more to finish games faster, and they don't care about surviving the long game, they want to win fast. So for them it might not be worth to play front, so we'll see. But I think the great majority of decks will at least play like 4 fronts now because of this, or at least 3. Alright, now we get into quite literally today's reveals. So first things first, we got a new normal order for Stoicheia, which is Magnolia centered. For a change, this is Wild Intelligence. So it's a grade 0, which a lot of people are like, why is it grade 0 not grade 1? Who knows. Play this with Counterblast 1, discard 3 cards from the top of your deck, so you mill 3, choose up to 1 card of the same grade as your Vanguard or lower from your drop, call it to rearguard circle. If your Vanguard is Sylvanhorn Beast King Magnolia, choose up to 2 cards instead of 1. This is really sweet. Like, this basically gives Magnolia, like Magnolia's already been running Spiritual Body Condensation, you know, just to Soul Blast 1 to revive something, and this just makes it even better. Like Counterblast 1 to potentially res 2 on turn 3 and onwards is really good for the deck sustain, because it likes to just like crap out a board, you know, and just kind of rush with it and then lose its resources and like clap back again. So especially against those kind of like matchups that can clap back at you, I think are really, really good. And in general, this is just a generic Counterblast 1 to revive something, which is really good. And for like anything that needs needs to mill and revive stuff is really good. Solo made a good point that this in premium is pretty nuts because you could play this in stuff like Gridora, you know, or like play Magnolia in Gridora as like, you know, as a grade 3, then you stride into like the Mega Colony stuff, and then you can basically play this, you know. In premium is also a really huge card. Just in the realms of standard, like this is just so good for Magnolia because you already needed revive cards just to kind of like keep up with the momentum, so you're not always playing stuff out of hand. And now basically like Zorga got a card that allows it to basically take 2 things out of the drop zone, and now we basically got Magnolia card as well that can take 2 things out of the drop zone, which is really nice. I do like this quite a lot. This is nice to like reactivate on place effects, like maybe Admantis will stay as well, you know, with this kind of card. I just think it's a really neat order. Like this card is super powerful, and I think that it feels like the type of card that's like a must include in my opinion, because this is just so good. Speaking of must includes though, Silverhorn Beast Damainaru is another really good card. It's a triple rare for Magnolia, which says when it's placed on Rearguard Circle, if your Vanguard is Silverhorn Beast King Magnolia, Soul Blast 1, so again Soul Blast, choose one of your rearguards, and until end of turn that unit can attack from the back row and gets power plus 5k. Then the second skill is once per turn Rearguard Circle, when this unit is chosen by your Vanguard's effect, this unit gets power plus 5k until end of turn. So this is also really cool because that first effect essentially allows you, like Magnolia generally needs a bit more early tempo, right? Even attacking with 4 attacks on turn 3 is pretty big, right? Many decks kind of struggle to deal with it, but it's nice that this allows you to get a 5th attack. It can even target itself, which is also really nice, so you don't have to have like a prior board setup ready to go. It can just target itself and just go just like that. And on top of that, it turns into like basically a 20k attack when Magnolia gives it that 5k ability to attack from the back row. And of course you can scale that up with Admantis with its own first skill to make it into like a 25. Just really good overall. Like this card just feels really nice. It fills up, like it doesn't like necessarily like fill up the weaknesses of the deck. It doesn't counter charge, it doesn't soul charge or anything, but it doesn't need to. This is the kind of card that tries to win you the game faster, and that's honestly what this deck could use, because the faster it wins games, like this deck is really aggressive, so the faster it wins games, I think the better it gets. So Damainaru just feels really nice in my opinion, which I mean, hell, like that's good for Magnolia. Like I personally enjoy the Magnolia deck quite a lot too, because it's just fun how like you can turn basically anything into a combo piece and just win quickly by turning even the smallest attackers into just like efficient numbers that like push and you win quickly. But now it's time for, of course, best girl moments, because Aurora Battle Princess Derry Violet is our first double rare for the Prison deck. She's an interesting card. I really love her art, you know, it's just beautiful, vibrant, colorful, it's just super great, but her effect feels like a meta call. It feels like a Brody almost. So when she's put on Guardian Circle, which means either from hand, from deck, from drop zone, from wherever, by intercepting, all of that works. If one or more of your opponent's cards are imprisoned in your prison, you Soul Blast 1 and choose one of your units, and it cannot be hit by a grade 2 or lower unit's attack until end of that battle. So what does this mean? If Bastion is meta, this card does nothing. Let's be clear about that. However, looking at the next set, so far my early impression is that Bruce might be one of the most common decks. Like Bruce feels like it's going to be really popular. Verena Elgar is a grade 2 as well, in case that's popular. I'm definitely going to be playing it a lot, so at least from my perspective it's popular. Shadow Army tokens are grade 1s. Magnolia only attacks with grade 2s for the most part. For Baron Magnus, they have quite a lot of like grade 1, grade 2 attackers as well. So this is basically a perfect card against those things. Especially feel like against Bruce, this is really huge because you make it so that like Edens don't hit. The Leonard from last week doesn't hit. So like big pressure pieces like that suddenly can't hit either, which feels pretty good. But it really depends on the meta. Like this card will probably be played here and there, but for the time being, it feels like a meta call, and it also depends on how well we can kind of keep those cards in the prison trapped. And speaking of keeping those cards in the prison trapped, we have Aurora Battle Princess Perio Turquoise. Oh man, this card, I really like this kind of like style that they're using with this, right? First things first, of course, her art is fantastic. I'm gonna want SPs of this, goes without saying, but her skill is so nice. Rearguard Circle, first things first. During your turn, if you have 2 or more opponent's cards in your prison, she gets plus 5k power. So immediately another 15k attacker. I've emphasized so much how important these are in the deck profile I did for this deck, because you need to make those 23k columns. So this already is looking at the spot of like, I don't know, grapple external basically at this point, right? Then the second skill is front row rearguard circle only. When your opponent's card imprison your prison is placed on rearguard circle, that unit gets minus 5,000 power until end of turn. That skill is so important in that it suddenly makes it so that, sure, our goal until now was like getting to like 3 prison, getting that drive check, but now we are becoming more and more of a control deck. A deck that just makes our opponent feel like they're in a sticky situation and they're just out of luck no matter what decision they make. You give me an Olden to imprison, I mean, that's fine. Here, take it back, you know, enjoy attacking with like 10k power after if I have 2 of these on the board. Boosters are basically dead. They're just like sitting there with 0 power, not even boosting for anything, which is also like really cool if you have 2 of her on the board. Even if you have 1 of her, that minus 5k is so nice. And most importantly, it makes your opponent ask the question, do I want to pay a Soul Blast to free some? Do I want to like pay a Soul Blast to place a card that I have in hand that I could place just from hand without having to lose that power and being able to like aggress as I normally would? It's that question that your opponent will ask, and especially if you set up 2 of her, they will ask that question even more so. That being said, you know, some decks can get around this. Of course, you can't attack into her because you have to free stuff in the main phase before the battle phase. But of course, you know, Eugene checks her. He just pops her and that's it. Bastion, Control Bastion, bot decks her. That's it, she's gone. Prison itself actually checks her, which is kind of funny. So it's not like an end-all be-all like amazing card that just like suddenly beats every matchup. Nope, it's still pretty matchup based, and some decks can definitely get around her, you know, just by being able to retire her, imprison her, etc. And there's still stuff like Orphis that basically just like, you know, the tokens vanish, and therefore this also like in that matchup feels kind of odd. But all in all, like, this is a really cool card, like just in that effect of making your opponent go like, I don't like the situation. That's what control decks are meant to do, right? The control deck in a card game is meant to put your opponent in a situation where they don't like where they are, and they're basically just like stuck, and they can't play the game normally, because playing the game normally and just like bashing face will put them in trouble. So they have to think. Whereas you as a prison player is just kind of sitting there like, ha ha ha, you know, like, oh, you're having a hard time. Well, sucks to be you. So I love it. It's a really cool card, and I'm very happy with it. Also, for next week, they announced that we will be getting the Dragonic Overlord and Phantom Blaster Dragon ride line, so that's going to be very exciting. So all that leaves is like 1 triple rare for Dark States, which should be like Baron Magnus support, and Verena Elgar. So we're almost done, and I feel like one of those will drop on Friday this week, so we'll talk about it next week probably. So yeah, it's been a very exciting season of reveals, and I'm really excited by everything that's going on right now. And DBTO2 just feels so good. Like, everything is like really high quality. Some cards do feel a little bit less so, especially like the Keter triple rare for the time being. I have like some question marks about, but all in all, like, this is looking like an amazing set, and we've barely seen anything. Like, there's still so much for us to see from this set, and there's still like basically a month until it releases, so there's plenty of time for them to kind of like not show us that much and just kind of wait till it comes out. But I'm excited to see how the meta will shape up with this new set, because some decks are basically exploring a completely different play style. Like Orphis suddenly is changing, Prison even is changing. Just like a lot of decks are changing the way they approach the game, and I love that they're expanding on that kind of layer with the game. There's also 2 tournaments that they like announced, or like 2 event things that they announced during the live stream that like they're related to Japan, and they're not necessarily like important to us global folks, but I want to talk about them because they are kind of meaningful to me at the very least. So first things first is that actually somebody I know, Amipan, is helping to organize the Batoroko Vanguard Fighters League. So Batoroko is a chain of card shops like all over Japan, and the really cool thing is that when I lived in Japan, I actually lived near a place called Takadanobaba, which is like the student area of Tokyo, where like a lot of students live or like just go to party and stuff like that. If you're into fighting games, that's where Mikado Arcade is. But Batoroko was like the closest locals I had, so I went there all the time. It was one of the most spacious, most amazing locals I've ever been to in Japan, and the staff are super friendly and just like very cool about everything, very professional, but at the same time very chill. And they're doing a special like Vanguard League for all formats where you can like win exclusive prizes after the league is done, after like the several months are done, kind of like our shop leagues that we do in English. But it's cool to see this now in Japan as well, and man, oh man, does this make me want to go back to Japan like as soon as possible. Like, once I eventually move back, like, boy, do you like, I can't wait to be able to like go to these kind of events. And speaking of events, they also announced the Kyushu Cup. I mean, they announced this a while ago actually, but the Kyushu Cup is basically like, Kyushu is a region of Japan, and it's going to have a massive massive cup, right? A big tournament, and they showed an exclusive playmat and sleeves for it, which looks so cool. The playmat looks like the way that you view the map in Pokemon Sword and Shield, which is amazing. I really want to copy this. And of course, the sleeves are really cool. I love event sleeves, as you guys know, so I definitely need to get my hands on these because they look so damn amazing. So that's just really cool. The last thing I wanted to quickly talk about that they also showed off was that we're getting, at least in Japan, they're getting a Trigger SP promo pack for like shop tournaments, which I think we might hopefully get in English too. And these critical triggers, front triggers, draw triggers, and heal triggers from the first booster set will be reprinted in SP in this promo pack. So that's super cool. There's a lot of really nice triggers that I like to use from these, you know, some of the Brancate ones, Keter ones, Dragon Empire ones. So really cool that we're getting these in SP now as well. So for the people that want to bling their decks entirely, this is just super cool and just opens up that door, which is amazing. Lastly, I want to talk about real quick the reprints. So for the Revival selection, they've started to show the reprints for some of the clans, and some of these are so important. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about them. I think Solemn Vanguard actually went into them in quite good analysis. So for Royal Paladin here, you can see Gansela Peace Saver. That's a stride that's been going up. It got reprinted once already, so it's really cool that they're like willing to reprint cards that already have reprints. Dude, Maskull, this was so hard to find. I was building premium Jewel Knights and this was impossible to find. Some people weren't too happy with the King of Knights Alfred. I think it's fine like to just throw in a cool nostalgia card, especially for the Zero folks. Like for them, it's nice to have this kind of nostalgia. And also just in general, it's a collectible, right? It's fine if not every single card is like a super staple, because these cards already are. You can see how super staple reprints these are. The favorite pupil Liu is also in here. That's a super important card for the Blaster engine. We have the Javelin that searches for the Floral Flogel, and I mean, speaking of which, there it is as well. And they're also putting like stand triggers into every single pack, and I guess just like choosing a stand trigger for Royals. Kind of wish the stand they chose was the one that Jesus won Worlds with instead of this one, but I mean, it is what it is. For Murakumo, it's mostly cards kind of like centering around the Infinite Loop, which is cool. People have been noticing that it's like not Hyuga related cards, which is also pretty, you know, it's something to think about. Shibarako Victor, we saw literally win an entire event. It won EU BSFO, which is really cool to see like a card that won an event basically get reprinted. And of course, it's a pretty good G-Guard that they chose to reprint too, so that's very nice. For Nova Grappler, I'm actually quite experienced in this one, and I know that all these cards are very nice to have. Maybe not so much the Arnest, that one's like fine, it's not really super important. It is played in some kind of like off-meta builds for Nova Grappler, but not so much like the top tier ones. I mean, top tier Nova doesn't really exist right now, let's be honest, sadly. But Favorite Champ Victor is a huge one. That card has gotten super expensive. Dogen Titan is very important. Gundreed has been getting pretty pricey too, so that's really good. Zubat Battler, you know, like it or not, is still the best Victor ever printed, so therefore it's really important to have him back in there as well. Same with Golshachi, super staple there. And Energy Girl has been going up like crazy in price, so I'm definitely happy to have her in triple rare now too, so that is very bueno, very happy about that. And then for Great Nature, of course, I think Symbol Monkey was the new card that we never got in English that they're now printing, you know, from the Japanese version. Balawurl is a massive one. Again, another stride that's been reprinted before that got a second printing. Really nice. Spangled also, I believe, has been reprinted before, but it's that bottom line here. The Big Belly and the Crayon Tiger in particular. Oh my god. Crayon Tiger, a reprint, has been asked for so many years. It's hard to even like think that we finally got to this spot. Also, the Talented Rhino is pretty important because, you know, a lot of decks do run it for that guard restrict. So these reprints have been really cool so far, and there's more because today they showed the Bermuda ones, and these are basically all like 10 out of 10. I can't think of a single card that's bad to see in here. The Tiroa is like a staple in almost every single Bermuda G-Zone. The Revere is really important in the Revere deck. The Anj Stride is played as like a one-of in basically every Bermuda G-Zone. The Citron G-Guard is played in basically every Bermuda G-Zone. The Trois is super expensive, and it's so nice to have her down at a normal price. Spica is also a huge combo card that's also been kind of going up in price and just really nice to have. And the Crook, I mean, a lot of people know Crook has been important in the past. Like, I thought she was restricted, if anything, so it's nice that... Did she get off the restriction list? I don't really remember, but I guess she maybe did. Then for Kagero, these are also quite cool too. Dumjit Valor, I'm not too sure about this one. This didn't feel like it's that hard to get. I would have rather seen Ziegenberg of all the strides to come back, so that one feels a bit like a miss. I think Ziegenberg might have been a bit more expensive here. Denal Griffin, of course, definitely very welcome. The Turnabout we knew is the like Japanese promo that we're getting in English here, so that's nice. That's like for the V people as well, you know, just a good card to pick up for Overlord because it's been played with Dauntless Drive, which is quite cool. The Destiny feels a bit like a miss. I don't really see Destiny played that much. The original The Cross though is really cool, although I do see a misprint in it. It does say the Stride logo in there, which it definitely should not be in there. But that's also an pretty expensive Legion card at this point that definitely needs to be printed again. So yeah, quite happy about the Cross coming back. Belog is another one, now in triple rare foil, which is super cool. Belog being accessible to everyone is really nice. And this Stand Trigger Inspire Yell Dragon was played in Blade Master, but I'm pretty sure Blade Master is gonna get its, you know, mastery taken away, so yeah, we'll see about that. Then for Shadows, oh my god, like how many times have I considered building a Luar deck and just seen the price of Esras and went nope. Luckily that's no longer an issue because they're reprinting the Morfessa Stride, which is so important. They're reprinting Plotmaker, which is an amazing G-Guard. Dragfall Luard, I'm not sure. I kind of would have liked the Trial deck Luard to have been reprinted instead. The Drag Heart, that one has been used way more recently in Luard lists, but I guess Dragfall is a triple rare, so that makes it maybe a little bit harder to get than the Dragon Heart. I'm not too sure. Final Blaster Dragon Break Ride, I've seen it used in some random decks here and there. It's kind of an interesting pick, but I guess it's again kind of like the King of Knights Alfred, you know, just there for like nostalgia's sake maybe. SRAS, I don't need to say anything. This card is way too pricey to have not been reprinted. It's so important that it got one. Belial Owl hasn't been used as much anymore, but still a really good card to have. And Cursed Eye Raven for a lot of people. Boy oh boy is that an important one because it's just so key. And then for Spikes, we have the Agrias that we've seen literally win massive tournaments. Hellheart 8 hasn't seen a printing in forever. This G-Guard, I'm not too sure how important it is, but that's definitely very nice. The original Rising Nova, I'm not sure if this is played. Maybe Spikes people can tell me. Same with the Stand Trigger, I don't really know too much about that. But the two there at the bottom, Jelly Beans and Mecha Trainer. Two cards from the very first season. I guess Jelly Beans is technically from Asia Circuit, but the first like year of Vanguard's history that basically never had a second printing. Like these cards in particular are so key. Like I'm pretty sure Conroe had a reprint, like the original starter Conroe had a reprint, but Mecha Trainer never got one despite being the same card for a different clan. So that's a huge nice one to see. Spikes definitely eating well, and I can't wait to see what other reprints we're going to be getting for some clans. There's some, especially like Genesis, I'm curious if they're going to reprint stuff like Taro, because that one's, you know, some people feel a little bit like about that one. But yeah, it'll be very hyped to see how things evolve going forward. Anyway though, that's it for me today, y'all. It's been a long video talking about this stuff, and it's 8 p.m. and I need to somehow get this video done before I go to bed, so I'm gonna be busy from now on. So thank you so much for watching. I'm very thankful to everyone that comes through, you know, comments, likes on these videos, you know, drops a sub to the channel as well. You know, we're still trying to pump into that 45k as fast as possible, so I'm doing my best and getting in there. So yeah, I hope to see you guys for many more videos. There's lots of stuff coming for overdress, and just in general, like my schedule is always really packed. And I hope to see you guys for Bushiroad Springfest online as well this weekend for overdress and V Premium. I think signups are basically almost full. I think they're full in all regions for V Premium, but that you can still go on the wait list. And I think for standard, you know, for overdress, they're filling up really quickly. So if you still want to sign up for Bushiroad Springfest online, make sure you do it fast. Anyway, that's gonna be it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.